You're lying on a table under the brightest lights you've ever seen. A stranger in a mask leans over you and says, "Count backward from 10. You say 10. You say 9. You say 8. And then you say nothing ever again, at least not in that moment, because the next thing you know, someone is squeezing your shoulder and telling you it's all over. No darkness. No dreams. No sense of time passing. Just a seamless, perfect cut. One moment you exist. The next moment you exist again. And somewhere in between, hours vanished from your life without leaving a single trace. So where exactly did you go? And here's the part nobody tells you. The honest scientific answer to that question is one of the strangest things you will ever hear. Most people assume anesthesia is just a very deep sleep. It isn't. Not even close. And that assumption, that comfortable, familiar metaphor, is actually hiding something far more unsettling about what you are, what consciousness is, and what it means to briefly stop being you. Here's what's actually happening. The moment that drug enters your bloodstream, it isn't putting you to sleep the way exhaustion does. It is dismantling the specific process that makes you a unified, experiencing person, not shutting your brain off. Dismantling the wiring between different parts of it. Neuroscientist Emery Brown at MIT has spent years studying brain activity during anesthesia using real-time EEG monitoring. What he found is that the brain doesn't go dark like a city in a blackout. It fragments. Different regions keep firing, but they stop talking to each other. They become isolated islands. And that coordination, that constant thundering conversation between billions of neurons, is exactly what you are. The moment it stops, you stop. Not your heart, not your lungs. You? Think about what that actually means. Right now, you are not located in any single part of your brain. You are the result of thousands of brain regions exchanging information so rapidly and seamlessly that it feels like one continuous, unified experience. One you. One now. One stream of awareness flowing forward through time. Philosopher and neuroscientist Giulio Tononi calls this integrated information. The idea that consciousness isn't a thing inside your brain. It's a process. It's what happens when enough different parts of your brain weave their signals together into something coherent. Take away the weaving, and you don't get a quieter version of you. You get no version of you at all. Anesthesia doesn't dim your consciousness. It unravels it. And this is where it gets genuinely strange. Because your brain doesn't simply go quiet when this happens. Researchers have found that right before full unconsciousness sets in, your brain often generates a brief burst of chaotic, disorganized electrical activity. A kind of storm. Neurons firing without coordination, without pattern, without meaning. Some scientists think this might explain the strange flashes of imagery some people report right at the edge of going under. Not a dream. Not a memory. Just the last scattered signals of a mind coming apart before the silence takes over. And then nothing. Not peaceful nothing. Not dark nothing. Just a complete and total absence of any subjective experience whatsoever. No duration. No sensation. No you to feel the passage of time. A 4-hour surgery and a 40-minute procedure feel exactly identical from the inside, because there is no inside. The machinery that tracks time, that stores moments, that says this is happening to me right now, all of it goes offline simultaneously. Psychiatrist and anesthesia researcher Kate Leslie has described it as a discontinuity of self. Not sleep, not unconsciousness in the ordinary sense. An actual interruption of personal existence. And you have probably experienced this already without ever thinking about it this way. Because here is the modern mirror. Every single night, somewhere in your deepest sleep cycle, something very similar happens. Not identical, but similar enough to be worth sitting with. During deep non-REM sleep, the brain's ability to integrate information across regions drops dramatically. Your brain is still running, but you aren't experiencing it the same way you experience a vivid dream. Those gaps in the night, the ones where you wake up with no memory, No sense of time, no anything. Those are the closest thing most people will ever get to what anesthesia produces on purpose. The difference is that anesthesia does it completely, deliberately, and with surgical precision. Now here is the part that even specialists find genuinely unsettling. It doesn't always work perfectly. There is a documented phenomenon called anesthesia awareness. Roughly 1 to 2 patients in every 1,000 surgeries retain some level of conscious processing during a procedure, even when the drugs are administered correctly. Most report fragments, distant sounds, a vague pressure, something like a half-formed thought. But in rarer cases, patients have reported being fully aware of what was happening to their body while being completely unable to move or signal to anyone in the room. Paralyzed, conscious, unheard. This is possible because anesthesia isn't one switch. It's 3 separate systems being managed simultaneously. One drug suppresses consciousness, one blocks pain signals, a third paralyzes the muscles to keep the body still during surgery. If the consciousness component is even slightly underdosed for a specific patient due to genetic differences in metabolism, body weight, prior drug tolerance, the other 2 components can still be working perfectly. The patient can't move. They feel no pain. But they are there. Listening, waiting. The reason this is so rare is because anesthesiologists are extraordinary at what they do. They monitor brain activity in real time. They watch for patterns in EEG data that suggest the integration process is starting to re-establish itself. They adjust constantly. But the reason it happens at all reveals something important. Going under isn't a binary state, conscious or not. There is a spectrum, a gradient of disassembly. And somewhere along that gradient is a version of you that is present but unreachable. Let's talk about ketamine for a moment, because it offers a completely different window into this. Most anesthetics work by suppressing activity and cutting off communication between brain regions. Ketamine works differently. It disrupts the relay station between your senses and your cortex, a structure called the thalamus, without simply quieting everything down. The result is a dissociative state. Patients describe floating above their bodies, separating from physical sensation, occasionally reporting experiences that sound strikingly similar to near-death accounts. Researcher Carl Jansen spent years documenting the overlap between ketamine experiences and near-death experiences, noting that both involve the same sense of detachment, the same feeling of observing the self from outside it. Some scientists now believe that the brain under extreme physiological stress may naturally trigger something like this, its own internal ketamine response, as a kind of emergency buffer against the full experience of dying. Whether or not that's true, what ketamine reveals is that consciousness isn't one thing that gets turned on or off. It's a collection of processes, each one capable of being disrupted separately, producing experiences that feel nothing like ordinary waking life and nothing like sleep and nothing like each other. So where do you actually go? Here is the honest answer, and it is both unsatisfying and astonishing at the same time. You don't go anywhere. Your brain never stops running its basic biological machinery. Your heart keeps beating. Your cells keep dividing. But the specific network of connections responsible for generating a unified experience of being you, that particular, irreplaceable pattern of coordinated activity, simply stops assembling itself for a while. You aren't stored somewhere. You aren't paused. You aren't dreaming quietly in some internal space. You are temporarily not being constructed. Think of it like a puzzle scattered across a table. The pieces don't go anywhere. They're all still there. But they stop being a picture. And the moment the connections reestablish themselves slowly, messily, often in the wrong order, which is why people say bizarre things when they first wake up, the picture reassembles. The you that wakes up in a recovery room is built from the exact same pieces as the you that was counting backward from 10. It just stopped being assembled for a while. And here is the part that should follow you out of this video and into whatever ordinary moment comes next. You count backward from 10. You make it to 8. And somewhere in the gap between 8 and the nurse squeezing your shoulder, the universe ran on completely without you. Stars moved. People laughed. Time passed. And you were not there to experience any of it, not because you were somewhere else, but because the process that makes experience possible had simply paused. The same process running inside you right now. In this moment, as you hear these words, the only thing standing between you and that silence is the continued, uninterrupted conversation between billions of neurons that you have never once had to ask to keep going. They just do. Every second, without you noticing, until one day, in a bright room, counting backward, they don't.